when you see old pictures, you don't know the history behind it, so you're kind of free to like make up your own kind of interpretation. And I always love to imagine the most like diabolical background.
Just scrolling through Instagram, again during Holy Week, mind you, and this post pops up. And in the center of this photo, as I described, is a man wearing a corset with his smushed up junk hanging out of the bottom of this corset.
This video is about meat.
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boy!
It's about vegetables as well, but it's about meat. It's about women's right to decide how their meat and their two vegetables are prepared and served. It's about how often men are seen as dangerous and naughty when they serve meat, but when women try and do it, it's not just a controversy about serving the world a delicious meal, but about what it means for a woman to be doing that. They both have the capacity to shake the world, but a woman's dinner shakes the world in a completely different way. Pearl clutchers react to both, but while a man's dinner plans are a temporary embarrassment to those with pearls to clutch, a woman's is akin to a moral crisis. And yet, I would argue that there is a certain beauty in the age of AI deepfakes, of paparazzi snaps, of revenge sweet corn, among the proliferation of all kinds of non-consensual methods that awful people on the internet use to attempt to disrobe the people they see on their screens. There is a beauty and power in controlling the narrative, the framing, the execution, by deciding how you are lit, in what context, the narrative yourself. There is something empowering there. You are claiming the right to your own luncheon from a world that insists that they will eat it for you at a time of their choosing. And by doing that, you have the power, and you decide the point of view in which people view your meal. No male gaze deciding when and where you are exposed. No surprise cameramen leaking your ingredients to the world. No, the gaze is yours. Although I imagine not everyone who followed you on Instagram might have done so if they'd have known you'd be serving your meat on there. I mean, some of us are vegetarians, but it is your space and your meat, so should you not control what is on there? Are people too squeamish? Are people only freaking out because of whose meat is being served to them, rather than the idea of being served meat at all? This video is about Ethel Cain's You open your phone in the early days of April 2025. You are following music legend and transgender icon Hayden Silas Anadonia, known by the pseudonym and the main character of her 10 out of 10 concept album Preacher's Daughter, Ethel Cain, on Instagram. To be clear, for the people who will inevitably be screaming in the comments, you are an adult, and you can only do this as an adult. Shut the fuck up. Back to the rest of you. You scroll for a moment, not really thinking much about anything. April Fools passed you by this year. Besides, the world is so dark and hopeless these days that any remotely whimsical news is immediately clockable as satire. And as much as The Onion tries, every real news headline is a parody headline out of our most sardonic and bleak dystopian movies. You see a photo of an old school friend. She has a husband and 2 kids now. They seem happy. You feel a flicker of resentment at their success, and then you feel crushingly guilty for that intrusive feeling. Good for them, you remind yourself. They found something worth holding on to in this life. You scroll past, trying not to look at the picture anymore lest the unpleasant thoughts return, and find your thumb hovering over the picture from Mother Cain, Ethel Cain's Instagram handle. The musician and queer icon is sitting on her bed in a tight-fitting corset. She isn't wearing any underwear. The way she holds herself, the way she locks eyes with the camera, the way her parts are tucked away yet still visible is so feminine. With her expression, she dares you to stare back at her, to confront who she is. She is proud. She is unapologetic. She is so unambiguously femme. She is beautiful, even down to the parts of her society would insist are anything but. It's intriguing. But this is Instagram. Her account is set to 18 plus and the photo is censored, but this is Instagram. As much as you know how your community and your peers will react to this photo, you can't help but stare into the abyss. So you check the comments.
Not bold at all. Like most say here, it's disgusting. Sorry, kids and teens will see this. Not art.
This is Zero and Iconography. Children are on this app.
This is actually disgusting. What?
Just male predator things.
Male activity, TBH.
Reported.
Men will be men.
This is disgusting. It's corn. Unsolicited corn. Children are on this app. This is predatory.
I feel molested by this man.
The world needs Jesus. Stop normalizing this shit.
Oh hey, it's me, Gollum. I've been trying to get my ring back from those stupid filthy hobbitses, but I'm dummy thick and the sound of my ass cheeks clapping keeps alerting the guards.
People are terrified of trans people's bodies. Even trans people are terrified of trans people's bodies sometimes, if some of the responses to this photograph are to be believed. You're going to send the trans community back decades. You give trans people a bad name. You're proving the transphobes right. People panic type, as if a photo, only viewable if you're over 18 and hidden by a filter on your personal account, made for you to express yourself, you always need to be thinking of presenting the most acceptable face possible to the public. Every trans person, in the face of the barrage of attacks on our community, must always be the perfect victim. We must never express ourselves in ways permitted for cis people. Cis people are allowed to be lewd. They are allowed to pose. They are allowed to feel sexy. They are allowed to post pictures of themselves online. But trans people must never be seen to be too comfortable with their own bodies. They must never frame themselves in a suggestive manner. They must always be ashamed of themselves and begging for cis people to take pity on us in our godforsaken forms, else we deserve to have all of our rights stripped away, as if that weren't happening already, long before Ethel Cain decided this picture of her was worth posting. And you can scream think of the children all you like. Children can't see this picture. This picture was not meant for children, and frankly, the way any action done by a queer person is perceived immediately as a direct message to children is extremely worrying and rooted in bigotry. For the most part, adults make art for other adults. Most drag shows, for example, are designed for adults. Those that are for children specify that and are very different. That doesn't mean that drag queens are inherently adult performers, but that not every piece of art is designed for all ages. No one asks the same of queer entertainers than they do for cis, straight entertainment. Magic Mike isn't for kids. It still exists, you still see posters of it. Violent movies and games are restricted by age. We all know that 5-year-olds probably shouldn't be watching gore movies, but we don't demand that gore movies be banned just in case a 5-year-old happens to walk in when their dad is watching one. It's well understood that plenty of art is made specifically for mature audiences, but no one gives drag queens or trans people the same grace that they give to, say, Sin City. But we'll get back to that.
She's just a woman.
There are many more comments than those I selected for this video. Most of them, thankfully, positive, praising the artistry and the mother of it all, but there are also many of these things. The usual hate comments, decrying what they perceive to be an attack on the very concept of morality. The fact that only people of 18 years of age or over can see this, and that you have to reveal the nudity if you want to see it, seems to be lost on them. As is apparently the simple concept that we have unlearned over the generations in favour of a deep sense of shame and hatred for ourselves and our bodies, that our bodies are just our bodies. They are not inherently anything. We should be able to cope with the fact that we have parts of our bodies between our thighs without having a panic attack. And this might be hard for some of you, especially those of you that left these awful comments, without sexualizing them. Moreover, our bodies aren't just normal and natural. The human form can be, and often is, especially in this context, with deliberate lighting, styling, and framing, art.
An anatomically perfect body as an expression of the freedom and sovereignty of the spirit that knows no subjugation. Michelangelo's David need not fear any Goliath.
This is Michelangelo's David, one of the most famous sculptures on the planet Earth. We have seen pictures of this entirely unclothed stone man throughout our entire lives. And while we might have giggled at it every now and again, we recognised it, even with its very apparent meat and two veg present, as art. Now, David is a sculpture, and a sculpture of someone who is not alive, whereas Ethel Cain, or at least Hayden Anadonia, is alive, and her post was a photograph. But photographs are art. They tell us something. They have intention behind them. And being that she posted this picture herself, she is the one telling us something with that picture. She decides how she is framed, how she is lit, what she reveals and where she reveals it. It is also artistic. And like Michelangelo's David, the presence of meat in art does not necessarily devalue it. It is, rather than rendering something corn on the cob graphic, a choice. And the choice to include one's meat, or the meat of the subject of an art piece, should tell us something about the artist's intentions. What was Michelangelo trying to say when he showed us that solid rock Johnson? The BBC suggests that the presence of a rather diminutive sausage on David is a deliberate attempt to desexualize the figure of David, to play down his sexuality. I'm not sure I believe that.
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boy!
Perhaps to demonstrate the beauty of the male form, you might have to admit that there's a part of the male form that we are taught to look away from, but is nonetheless part of most cis men's bodies. And to avoid talking about that, it's not fully embraced the reality of the male body. There is a story of Queen Victoria having a copy of David for which a fig leaf was made to cover up his replicated sausage. His spam, if you will. A commentary perhaps on the shame and growing rigidity of gender roles in Victorian England and Western Europe as a whole. For Ethel Cain, might we consider the way the world sees transgender women, and the way the world exploits transgender women, and indeed women as a whole, through demonization and objectification, by condemning the existence of trans women, and particularly the sexuality of trans women, as inherently dangerous, criminal even, by robbing us of our ability to determine our own image, to find beauty in our own form, because that form is inherently othered, disparaged, and condemned as ugly and even mutilated. Does framing yourself, then, in the manner of many nude paintings of women in art before then, not reclaim some of that power for the photographer and the subject of that image? Female nudity in art goes back to the dawn of time itself, and yet for hundreds of years, our most famous art pieces, many of them depicting female nudity in incredible detail, were entirely the product of male artists. Men decided how women were depicted, in what poses, in what contexts, how they were to be seen, what roles they could occupy. And when a people have little to no control over how they are depicted, they live in a narrative outside of their own choosing. Taking that control back means being able to more freely choose how you are seen. It means being able to tell your own story.
When you see old pictures, you don't know the history behind it, so you're kind of free to make up your own kind of interpretation, and I always love to imagine the most diabolical background.
People are weird about trans bodies. And I mean deeply, deeply weird about trans bodies. How many posts have you seen crying about some trans person just going about their day, screaming about how this perfectly normal human being is a mutilated monster, wearing the flesh of their dead former self forever ruined by hormones, made forever infertile, with irreversible damage, healthy breast tissue ripped out. That's one of their favourites. All carrying the implication that were it not for this person transitioning, they would have led a perfectly happy, normal heterosexual cisgender life, and worse, in some instances, that they would have been the perfect partner to the person doing the complaining. Heartbroken and explaining in great detail that that discarded breast tissue would never feel the touch of a, The
saddest things that I read, and I hope Sinead doesn't mind me saying this, was Sinead's contribution. Sinead has had, as she's told you, her breasts amputated, and she has taken male hormones that have given her secondary male characteristics, voice, and she has hair loss. And she said that all of this had happened before she had had a partner, an intimate partner. Can you imagine that? And up and down the country and around the world, girls are removing breasts that have never known a lover's caress.
I've seen these comments so often. Jordan Peterson said this about Elliot Page, if you remember. And honestly, I don't know how these people live with themselves. Because I can't finish writing down the shit they say online on their public accounts with their full names attached without wanting to puke.
Were those male breasts or female breasts that were removed? Final phrase, criminal physician. I must say that I've had some post-coital, so to speak, regrets about that phrase. Were the operations undertaken by the fascist physicians who carried out the Nazi medical experiments legal? Up yours, woke moralists. We'll see who cancels who.
But people are weird about trans people's bodies. When trans man and drag queen Gottmik walked the runway on RuPaul's Drag Race All Stars 9 with an outfit representing their top surgery, there were articles about how horrible it was from straight people and transphobes who clearly have never seen Drag Race for weeks. Hell, I was in an advert once selling strawberries for the co-op, and when Graham Linehan, famous women's rights advocate and most divorced man on earth, found out, he claimed I was trying to coerce lesbians into doing things with me of a meat nature. And unless strawberries are code for something that I wasn't aware of, I think all of that was entirely in his head. And to be fair, his head is massive, so there's a lot of room for delusions and nonsense in there.
A good strawberry is
big, juicy, moist, full of seeds. People are deeply weird about trans people's bodies. Most people have never met a trans person in real life. For many people, the only time they will ever see a trans person's body is when the blinds are down and they pull up a certain website and decide to, reveal their meat. People act like trans people's bodies are inherently 18+, that our mere existence is smut, that we are crazed pests acting out our most depraved fantasies. And much of that is pure and simple bigotry, trying to find a smear that sticks and failing to understand that anything might exist outside of the traditional ideals of the gender binary and the nuclear family. But also, more people have seen trans people only through adult sites than have met us in real life. And that is the kind of thing that'll make people have deeply weird opinions about us as a people, and especially about our bodies. If they should be allowed to exist, and how they ought to be allowed to be framed. Preferably for them, for their private tastes, hidden in public but accessible for a small fee, somewhere their partners can't catch them looking. Available on demand.
It represents a universal ideal of feminine beauty and has been reproduced countless times throughout the world.
This is the birth of Venus by Botticelli, one of the most iconic depictions of the female form in art, painted by a man, Botticelli. And with that in mind, take a look at the way that Venus is framed. Venus teases those who gaze upon her, covering the most controversial parts of her body, but not very well, still revealing much, and her hiding only adds to the probably intended eroticism of the painting. Venus, the goddess of love, is painted for the pleasure of a presumed male viewer. She stands at an inherently unstable angle, something unrealistic, but that doesn't matter. It's not about how she can stand, it's about how she can be seen. There is something vulnerable about her. To her right, the hour of spring rushes to cover her up. Fun fact about Venus, actually. Venus, or Aphrodite, was born when the Titan Uranus was castrated. When his two veg fell into the sea, they created a deluge of sea foam, out of which Aphrodite was born. Sounds weirdly transgender to me. Aphrodite born of one of the most stereotypically male body parts? Born from a form of bottom surgery, no less. Born from a man, or his sea foam, or as the queer classicists put it, the most beautiful goddess, who was born as a fully formed woman, was at the same time considered to be biologically just 100% Uranus meat. In fact, Professor Bethany Hughes, in her book Venus and Aphrodite, History of a Goddess, describes the story of the birth of Venus as an early recognition of the non-binary nature of sex and desire. But let's get back to Botticelli, and let's too get back to those people who've only seen trans people in a certain not safe for work context. Because one of the things that struck me about Ethel Cain's Instagram post was that she was in control of the way she was depicted, rather than someone like Botticelli, rather than the usual culprit in depictions of women's bodies in art. The male gaze.
The term male gaze was coined in 1975 by feminist film critic Laura Mulvey, and refers to the tendency for the visual arts to assume and be structured around a presumed masculine viewer. The male gaze manifests when the camera takes on a perspective of a stereotypical heterosexual man. An indisputable example of this is when the camera lingers, caresses, or pans across a woman's body.
I was probably in college when I first learned that movies could commandeer my desires in a manner hostile to my flourishing as a woman. My favourite film at the time was Sin City, a 2005 neo-noir adapted from Frank Miller's graphic novel series of the same name. The men were smoking hot, fueling my nascent infatuation with Clive Owen and Bruce Willis, and even, maybe in some corner of my psyche, the comeback bruiser Mickey Rourke. But, as in many a noir, the women provided much of the spectacle. There was Alexis Bledel, playing to type as a blue-eyed Bambi named Becky, Carla Gugino, as a parole officer with a high ass and a gauzy robe, Brittany Murphy, a pouty waitress draped in a lover's starched white shirt, Deborah Naoki, a gorgeously mum assassin, Rosario Dawson, lethally beautiful sheathed in leather, Jessica Alba, gyrating in chaps. Their characters were assembled from new and old Hollywood types, dizzy dames, femme fatales, strong female leads, neither capitulating to those codes exactly, nor revolting against them. A winking, pulpy pastiche by design. Sin City replicated with gusto, a cinematic genre that made a tradition out of sublimating its anxieties about womankind via sultry, duplicitous characters. In one shot, the male narrator broods in the background, while a fish-netted rear end belonging to no character in particular fills the foreground. What is that ass doing there? Where does it exist within the space of the story? And if it's there to court our appreciation, who does it think we are? Men, possibly. Often these days we confront such questions by invoking the concept of the male gaze. The term was popularised 50 years ago by the British film theorist Laura Mulvey, who wrote in a 1973 essay called Visual Pleasure in Narrative Cinema of how the male gaze projects its fantasy onto the female figure, which is styled accordingly. Mulvey sought to break down the mechanics of looking to expose how cinematic conventions reinforce patriarchal fantasy.
Breasts that have never known a lover's caress.
Like Jackson, I too grew up admiring the look and unique style of Sin City. As a massive comic book fan myself, that's probably not a surprise. Embarrassingly, perhaps, I had a poster of Jessica Alba in the movie on my wall when I was a teenager, adorned with the horrifically misogynistic line from the movie that I was too young to understand until years after I'd put it up on my wall and suffered psychic damage, and gave my ex psychic damage when she first saw it.
Skinny little Nancy Callahan. She grew up. She filled out.
Now that is deeply weird, and yet we grow up seeing the male gaze in art as the norm. When Transformers came out, kids flocked to the cinemas to see giant robots fight, and got a full dose of Michael Bay's addiction to making the male gaze impossible to ignore, as Shia LaBeouf stands fully clothed, gawking at Megan Fox, who is shot like Michael Bay directed the movie with one hand. Women are denied agency, and the camera looks at them like a horny teenage boy. Men are allowed to exist in many different contexts. Often women are objects, there as ornaments, decorations rather than participants in the narrative. David stands proud, everything is on display, and he is not ashamed. Venus covers herself badly, she can barely stand without help, figures to her side rush to cover her shame. Pete Wentz, Chris Evans, even Jeff Bezos have had media storms about pictures of their meat going public. But while this might have been seen as naughty, maybe even scandalous, it was not met with the disgust, the calls for shame, the accusations of abuse and predation that Ethel Cain was.
When you have $140 billion, dick pics make no sense!
People are deeply weird about trans bodies. People are deeply weird about women's bodies. Women are traditionally framed according to the whims of male artists. This is not that. And in an age of deepfakes, of pictures being leaked as revenge, of increasingly sinister methods of taking control over the images of those in the public eye, taking the way your body will be depicted, will be framed, into your own hands, making art from your body, from your image, reclaiming your form in the midst of constant, exhausting attacks on it from media figures to politicians to people on the street, is revolutionary. It is art.
That I love. I absolutely love.
By choosing how you are shown to the world, by doing it on your own terms, having control over the image and the dissemination of that image, you maintain a level of power over how you are seen that you don't have over, say, paparazzi snaps, or, much worse, the kind of methods the creepiest people on the planet use to disrobe celebrities, from images never meant to be seen in that light, and against the will of the people depicted.
This is what pain looks like. This is what it looks like, okay?
In 2019, Twitch streamer Atriarch was caught viewing deepfake adult material of his colleagues Maya Higa and Pokimane on a deepfake website, admitting that he subscribed to and paid for content of his colleagues and friends, who had their likeness used to create material that they'd never done or agreed to, but that had their faces plugged into because of their fame. The incident alerted millions online to the problem of deepfake material. Cutie Cinderella, a friend of Atriarch's, famously filmed a tearful response after finding out that she was featured on the deepfake site, and British live streamer Sweet Anita found that for years, deepfake sites have been making material featuring her without her consent and without her knowledge. This was a huge story at the time. I even covered it myself. But it's notable that this thing has been happening to celebrities outside of the influencer space for even longer. If you are a woman in the public eye, chances are someone has mocked up something you would never approve of yourself. And that's terrifying. And apart from anything else, it takes power away from you. It robs you of the right to decide how your own body is seen. Something we should all be able to decide on our own terms. Our bodies are beautiful. We should be able to see that and make peace with it, and even sometimes show them off if that's what we want to do. But things like these deepfake sites can make us afraid of our own selves, our own sexuality even, our own body parts. When people act like we are something on a plate for their consumption, instead of human beings with our own wishes, our own will, our own tastes, and our own different levels of comfort with who, where, and how people see us, it can sometimes feel like our own bodies are working against us. That our bodies betray us by existing in a way that attracts these people. stopping people from seeing us as we are, and instead turning us into objects. Objects for consumption. Mere ingredients for a meal marinated in the male gaze. When we should be the people who choose when, where, and how the camera sees us. And what it is to say about us, our bodies, and the minds behind the shots.
What does it mean to look trans, and why is that a bad thing?
Why are trans bodies always compared to the bodies of those who aren't trans?
Why is it seen as the end goal not to look trans?
And that's not me saying that to empower yourself you need to consider your meat. Far from it. We are taught at a very young age that women's bodies in particular are inherently sexual. This is not true. Your body is your body. Nothing more, nothing less. A naked body is not an invitation to engage in the kind of behavior depicted on deepfake websites. Sometimes people are just naked, and that's not a sexy thing. It's their bodies. If I make dinner naked, it's not because I'm secretly trying to wish cast some sort of big sausage pizza adjacent scenario. Maybe it's because it's warm, or my clothes are in the wash, or because I just felt like it. We get to choose in which contexts our bodies are to be seen through that lens. Or at least we should, in a world where we have the agency we deserve and that we have the right to. Equally, wanting to be seen through that lens is nothing to be ashamed of. And this is a note to me as well as anyone else. Last month, for the first time in the 34.5 years I have been on this planet, I took some pictures of myself that I cannot show on this website. And I wouldn't want to. This isn't that kind of show. But the experience was life-changing. Just an hour alone with my body and a camera did wonders for my confidence and for my self-esteem. After growing up always being the ugly one in each friend group, always being the odd one out, it's been really hard for me to believe that there are people who actually find me attractive. And that's been a huge block to my ability to pursue romantic relationships, to wear what I want, and to carry myself how I want to see myself as worthy of love, frankly. But after several glasses of wine and a lot of encouragement from a couple of people, I decided to take the plunge. I decided how I was framed. I decided how I was angled. These pictures could be for me alone if that's how I wanted it. I was safe. I was powerful. And seeing myself through the lens I had decided for myself, in a way I had never allowed myself to be seen before, least of all by myself, it changed the way I view my body at a fundamental level. Like Ethel Cain in that photograph, I was powerful. I was the camera and the subject. I locked eyes with the lens and decided how I ought to be seen. And I was, at the end, kicking myself that it had taken me what may well end up being half of my lifespan to allow myself to see me, all of me, as art, as something beautiful, as something worth looking at. Maybe that sounds sad, but it's true. You spend your life being bullied and ridiculed, and when you finally find the courage to come out as trans, you have the entirety of the media and the political establishment screaming that you are an abomination. That'll do things to your self-image. And one of the only ways to undo some of that damage is to reclaim the image of your body. And for you to decide how you ought to be seen. And what you are worth. And I promise you, all of you are worth far more than you think.
And I feel it there in the middle of the night when the lights go out, but I'm still standing here. And say what you want, say it like you mean it with your fist once. Along go on with your kids in the front, just giving one more day.
Hey, thank you for watching this one all the way to the end. Let's find out if this is allowed on YouTube. Hopefully the innuendos worked, and I won't get a ban hammer for this one, but it's I think this was important. And it was also not about the potential end of the world, which is something, because oh my lord. Hopefully we'll be okay. Maybe by the time this comes out, everything will be okay. That'd be nice. What if everything was okay for a change? Well. Anyway, away from Fantasyland. If you like this video, hype it. Hype it up. Hype now, hype early, hype often. Like it, leave a comment, subscribe, tell all your friends about it. And if you got some money, give it to me, because I need it to live and to get out of my debt. And by that, I mean my overdraft, and then get out of it so I have enough money to pay my taxes and stuff, and all for my groceries and those things. You can do that with one-time donations and coffee or PayPal, links below as always. Or better yet, you can sign up to my Patreon or YouTube memberships where you get occasional early videos, uncensored versions of censored videos, access to the members-only Discord, my Nintendo Switch friend code, stream archives when I've got that sorted. I keep threatening to sort that. So you can feel free to nudge me about that. Exclusive content on there with the interviews and stuff. Maybe I'll put some stories up. I also maybe put some stories up that got rejected, because then everything will be published. You can maybe have those. You can also, most importantly, you can get your name read out at the end of each video, just like Cat, read this fart noise out. The Flying Brit, Aegis, Uncast Shadow of a Southern Myth. Start that again. Uncast Shadow of a Southern Myth. There we go, you get twice because I fucked it up. Erinar, Rain, Michael McGrorty, Will, Alexandra Barnes, Reese Net, Ken Sword and Andrew Steele, Georgie Calito del Mozzote, Anna Nicholson, Junjun Slime, Naomi Gorman, Bellady, Ben Norman, Brooklyn at Heidi Law, Transform and Function, Cara Patching, Mattia98, Lilith Dawn, Spin Noir, Gilda Gilded Dragon, A Slice of Cake, Rue, Buried Elk, Ewan Bennett, Maltium, Gina Service, You Are Made of Stupid, Tomo, Melissa Jackson, Ren, approves of your stuff, Minstrel of course, Emma, not Emma, Jeffrey on Tom, Not Quite So Brave, Sir Lancelot, LFR, Trecoy, Proquar, Robin Thomas, Emily Eisenberg, Garlic, Scape, Kira B, No Sparkling Heart, Corey, Gianna J, Might in the Sword, Carolyn, Imogen Q, Luciano Frias Andrade, Adam, Harry, N-Dog191, Cav, Quesadilla, The Tortilla Azul, Leron, Adam Lees, Daniel Nevels, No Not That, Paul, MB, Wandering Wonder, Lex Phoenix, Enter the Cruzitz Mirror, DJ, Tina Boeia, James W, Thorin Gill, Deborah Boone, Zilla's Athenaeum, Vince Huetica, Amelia Lisette, Jay, Frank McManus, Susan Foster, Helen Riel, Sierra Whiskey, Ali Cackle, John and Lloyd Luciente, Jason Cribbett, Shield Baden, Borum Podolsky, Nyla, Pushy, Jesus, Casual Observer, Mantary, Courtney Burmack, Sleepy Slug, Summer Piglet, Brain Douche, Artie Wolf, Deanna McMillan, Carolyn Regalado, Alexander Lilly, Howard Lott, Marky Love, Zach Beavan, Meow Meowski, Kamui, Eva Kebab, Marty Hunt, Robin McCallan, Jane Lee Savarian, Melissa Allen, Ataraxis Builds Things, Sarah Francesca Smith. Thank you so much for all your help. Hope everyone's having a not horrible April. Hopefully when this is posted, there's still a world to talk about. Ooh no. Maybe I should have put a full video instead. Let's not go into that territory. You can help me out if you want. That would be nice. If not, just have a great day and a great life. I love you. Do I? Yes, I do. I love you. Do with that what you will.
Oh hey, it's me, Gollum. I've been trying to get my ring back from those stupid filthy hobbitses, but I'm dummy thick and the sound of my ass cheeks clapping keeps alerting the guards.